Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is the Worcester District Medical Society's 2021 Women in Medicine Leadership Forum. And we are thrilled tonight to have so many people joining us. I'm hoping this is going to be the last one that we have to do by Zoom, but that's okay because I think this does tend to work okay. So thank you so much for all of your attention to this and for your willingness to tune in to us. I do want to thank the Women's Caucus that I'm very honored to be chair of. I'm going to name the people that are involved in this. So there's Doctors Annie Abraham, Janet Abrahamian, Marianne Felice, Kiri Karen Kelsa, Heidi Leftwich, that I have to give a shout out to because she's the one who got us our speaker for tonight. So thank you, Heidi. Jane Lockery, Kurti Negpal, Phyllis Pollock. I want to thank Phyllis for her years that she has served on this. She was one of the founding members of this, of the Women in Medicine and the Women's Caucus. So thank you, Phyllis, for your time. Manjul Shukla, Rebecca Spanagle, Martha Waite, Jennifer Yates, and the student representatives, Kelly Flanagan and Michelle Shabo. We also have some new members. I'd like to welcome our new members, Doctors Rebecca Kowaloff and Betsy Lueder Polynice. We have resident members, Elizabeth Babersky, Stephanie Clegg, and students that have joined as new members of our caucus, Shani Aharon, Rachel Anderson, Shana Kumar, Sassy Schick, love the name Sassy, Rebecca Tui, and Paula Whitmer. So I would like to next acknowledge long-term support for our programs, and that is from the Physician Insurance, which was formerly the PIAM, the insurance agency of the Massachusetts Medical Society. And with us tonight, they have been so generous in supporting all of our programs over the years, and we've been doing this for quite some time. I would like to recognize Tom Bryant, who is here as president of Physicians Insurance, Megan Stanley, who's marketing coordinator, and with us tonight we have Kathy Murch, who's a regional sales representative, and she's going to say a few words for us right now. So Kathy, you're on.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Linda, for that lovely introduction. We are always delighted to be able to participate in this annual forum. For those of you who aren't familiar with Physicians Insurance, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Massachusetts Medical Society, and we are an insurance agency. We were formed for the purpose of assisting doctors in finding affordable malpractice insurance originally, and it's been a challenging year. We've had the opportunity to work with the changing medical scenario to assist our new clients and our existing clients with finding flexible and affordable options that meet the new needs and opportunities that have been presented during this time. Since I don't have to remind you that things have changed a bit, we're getting back on track, but we are here for any of your insurance questions. We also offer health insurance and other commercial lines that may fit your medical practice. So our information is up. You can find us on the website, the Mass Medical website, and any questions whatsoever, feel free to give me a call. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I know that you've been very helpful to many of our members. So if anybody has any questions or think that, oh, this might be a good idea, please give Kathy or just look on the website for Physician Insurance. So thank you again for your support.
Thank you.
So I do want to mention that we are recording this program. So you might want to mute yourself just in case. So just to let you know that. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Heather Lipkin. Dr. Heather Lipkin is an associate professor in maternal fetal medicine at Yale University. She went to Weill Cornell Medical College, did residency at New York University and fellowship at Brown and Columbia University. She's a practicing physician and is also actively involved in perinatal epidemiology research and has a degree in clinical epidemiology from the Mailman School of Public Health. She is a consultant for the CDC's Vaccine Safety Data Link team at Health Partners Research Foundation and is actively involved in study design the interpretation of findings and manuscripts on ongoing studies of vaccine safety during pregnancy. I could go on for about another hour, but I am going to stop right here because we would like Dr. Lipkin to do her presentation. Just so people know and have an idea of timing, we are hopefully going to be ending at approximately 7:45. So with that, I'm going to have Heather go ahead and take over. Thank you so much, Heather, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Young, for the nice introduction, and to the Women's Caucus and Heidi, who recruited me to come today. What I usually ask during this talk, just because it's personal stuff versus a routine academic lecture, is if you want to, get off the gallery and shut your screen, I totally understand because it's nighttime and we have lots of things going on. But if you want to stay on, it's nice to see faces sometimes as I go through some of this information. And then the other thing I share is that I can provide a PDF of this. Lots of times people take screenshots with all the information I'm going to present. So don't worry about that. If there's any information on here that you want, I can send you guys a PDF so you can get just the different resources later on. So tonight I'm going to talk about burnout and thriving and my personal journey. I usually start the talk with this woman crossing the bridge. It kind of feels more like this year, like I've been climbing a mountain, not crossing some peaceful bridge, as all of you can attest. And I do have, I am on the Data Safety Monitoring Board for the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine studies, but it's totally unrelated to this talk. And then this is something that I'm building with the Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine. Also, just to let you know, some of these resources will be more widely available. We're creating an online resource, and hopefully they'll open it up to more than just our members for a lot of these resources to be available. This is almost done. The goals of my talk today are to discuss my personal path with tips on thriving, to review the existence of data on physician burnout, different dimensions of burnout, and really to talk about the definition of wellness and evidence-based ways to improve, including things that really helped me as I went through this process. This is not a solution to all the problems within the healthcare system or an attempt to put a Band-Aid on the culture or specifically address real mental health issues related to burnout, although I do have some resources if anyone needs help and wants to email me. And this is not a solution for burnout during COVID-19, although I will share some data that I found on the burnout associated with COVID. So this is who I am kind of academically. I'm an associate professor in maternal fetal medicine. I'm now the program director for the Maternal Fetal Medicine Fellowship, blah, blah, blah. But that's my very official slide that I use. And I'm proud of that, but also who I am is like a mother, a friend. I own 2 rescue labs. That's the other, my second lab wasn't part of this picture, a wife. And that's a huge part of my identity as well that played into how I handle being in medicine. I started my science with this mongoose riding kind of roller skating kit on the left to a really joyful resident. And here I am with my first poster at a scientific forum as an intern. And I actually, as part of creating this talk, I looked back on my med school essay because I know we have some residents and potentially some students. And I found it. I don't know why I'd saved it, but I did find it. And I wrote, my love for people and genuine concern for their quality of life has convinced me to pursue a career in medicine. I want to make life better for the many people with whom I interact. So ultimately, I pursued a career in OBGYN. And this is me with my 2 co-residents who are still 2 of my closest friends today. I did all the stuff. I did the school, the education. I tried to cook my kids healthy food. I published journal articles. If you publish in AJAG, which is our kind of higher level journal, maybe you want to publish in JAMA. If you get a smaller grant, maybe you want a bigger grant. If I'm an associate professor, what about a full professor? And again, I am very grateful for all the education and experiences that I had, but I never really took the time to stop and think about, what was meaning until the event I'm about to describe happened to me. And so my story really begins, and I'm going to talk a little bit about second victim syndrome, which is defined as a healthcare practitioner who's involved in an unanticipated adverse patient event medical error, or patient-related injury and who's traumatized by the event. This no way belittles the actual patient and the trauma they experience, but it's important to recognize, and I didn't recognize this was happening to me, that the physician is also affected as well. So I'm going to tell you guys a story, and I'm going to try and do it because I know not everybody's OBGYN, so I'll try and do it in a more general sense, but this was a real life altering experience that really changed kind of my focus in my day-to-day life and set me down this path. There was this patient, I'm going to call her Sarah, and she was followed by my practice. I had seen her multiple times in her pregnancy. She had 2 previous vaginal deliveries and 1 early pregnancy loss. And she had some anxiety due to the early loss, but it wasn't related to delivery. But she had some general sense of anxiety that something bad was going to happen to her during her delivery. I think it was her anxiety, but I had spent so much time talking to her and keeping her calm and working with her in the office that I was really excited when I came on for a 24-hour shift and found her in labor. And over the course of my time there, she became fully dilated and pushed for a long time. And ultimately, because she wasn't delivering for many reasons, we decided we would proceed with the C-section. It wasn't an emergency. Everybody looked fine. But, my role on the labor floor as one of the on-call attendings is that we're sort of in charge of the labor floor. So if somebody has a question, they can ask us, and we're the resource. So I was standing outside her room, and this other provider came up and had a question for me. And unbeknownst to me, in her room, the patient's room, she had some pain. A resident went in there. We have a pretty decent sized labor floor. Nobody alerted me to what was going on. They had an ultrasound where they were trying to find the baby's heartbeat, and they couldn't find the heartbeat. Now, this is a few years ago, and it takes our ultrasound machines a good 5 to 10 minutes to boot up. All of this has since been remedied since this event, but all this had happened. And for some reason, I was literally 3 doors down. I just kind of got this sense that something was happening, even though no one had called me. It probably was only about 15 minutes, but when I look back, it felt like forever when you're in the middle of the event. So I walked into the room, and she was, an obese woman, and it was really hard for them to see everything with the ultrasound machine. But I just got that feeling that you get, for me, in obstetrics, and I'm sure people have it in other fields, where they just sense that something's not right. And I called for an emergency C-section. We had the patient in the operating room very quickly. The anesthesia doctor couldn't get access. Ultimately, I was going to perform a C-section under local anesthesia, but we were able to get general anesthesia, and we had the infant out in about a minute. It felt like it took forever, but the entire case was probably only around 20 minutes. And once we had the infant out, and for the obstetricians, it was just the baby was, floppy, white. There were large clots. She had had a huge posterior uterine rupture. And this is someone who had never had a C-section before. And her life was in danger. I could hear them coding the baby. Ultimately, the NICU team was there, and they took over the baby's care and transferred the baby to the NICU for something called head cooling, which some of you may know of. And her life was saved. And I walked out of the operating room after the case. And this is a critical point. It's 2 a.m. and I still have to cover the whole night. I still had other patients in labor, other things going on that I was still responsible, and I just felt terrible. I can tell you, after this happened, I actually was covered a week of inpatient, and then I went on vacation, and I just never felt quite right during that week. I was with my friends, and they kept asking me about work, and I didn't really understand what had happened to me. But I just knew that I just wasn't all there, even though I was with some of my best women friends. I know this is a women's forum, so I was meeting up with all my women friends from public health school for a weekend away. And I just kind of felt, in retrospect, was probably shocked the whole time. I felt embarrassed. I didn't want to talk about my work. Second victims tend to feel, and we'll talk a little bit more about this realization, dread and agony, overreaction, anger, and trauma, ultimately, from an event. And just a little bit about second victim and how this has evolved. We've really learned from this experience in our institution, and others have too in general across the country. A lot of times the entire team is impacted by a clinical event. Now we have a whole peer support and debriefing environment that didn't exist at the time. And each second victim will have their own unique experiences and needs, but providers do tend to worry in a predictable pattern. So the first stages are this impact realization, which is chaos and the response. You have reflections that are intrusive. Ultimately, you have to endure kind of an inquisition. Now, for me, I talked to our director of patient safety, and he was wonderful. He sat me down the next day, or probably Monday morning, and he said to me, and this is just such a testament to how we view our healthcare system. He told me about an incident that he had when he was a resident. He told me that he would trust me to deliver his wife if she had a baby. And, even though I didn't know this was going on, and this is another important point, it still stuck with me for years after this event. Like, I wasn't in the room. It wasn't my call. I wasn't aware of what was happening, but the feeling I had about that delivery stuck with me for a long time. So a lot of physicians have to endure sort of an inquisition. We don't really have great, support to deal. A lot of people drop out. There's really 3 trajectories. Drop out, which is you change profession, you leave the profession. Sometimes people have to undergo litigation after an experience like this. You survive, or you're just doing okay, but you're still affected, but don't really realize what's going on, or you thrive, which is to make something good come from the unfortunate clinical experience. For me, this ultimately led to my experience of thriving. I went on to tell the story to the whole hospital system, which is over 1,200 people at Yale. This is before COVID-19. We were in an auditorium. So many people had emailed me that they had an event, even some of the heads of the hospital system, of things that they had experienced that up until that point, nobody really talked about things. And I think that the world is changing a bit where people are talking more about their experiences. We also did a podcast. That's my colleague, Chris Petker. We did a podcast, and again, for the Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine. And I had so many people reach out to me over the years after hearing me tell my story and provide resources. So just in terms of my personal, in terms of second victim, I always like to say, why not begin every investigation by saying to the individual staff member, this must be very difficult for you. How are you doing? In the process of looking up the story and kind of thinking about my journey and creating this talk, I actually looked up the infant records, and the infant is actually now a toddler who's doing fine and has no residual defects, but sometimes that doesn't happen. And it can be very, very traumatic. And here are some additional resources for secondary victim syndrome. So for me, this is something that really impacted my work after this had happened. I really had no idea what was happening to me. This is kind of before I talked about it. I just started to feel like I didn't really know what was going on. I had anxiety when I was covering the labor floor, which made me very vigilant, but also kind of anxious. But I didn't want to be anxious because I didn't want to affect the residents. A good night was when a baby didn't wind up having head cooling. I felt like I was faking it for almost a year. I thought about other jobs. I watched a lot of HGTV, but I pushed myself to go on. And then ultimately I did wind up talking about it. And I did some leadership training a couple years after, and I heard about second victim syndrome. And that's what really kind of led me down this path and led me to help myself and thus bring a lot of these tools to other people. So burnout is a long-term stress reaction characterized by depersonalization, including cynical or negative attitudes towards patients, emotional exhaustion, a feeling of decreased personal achievement, and a lack of empathy towards patients. This is from a colleague. So one of the first things I did is I gave a lecture to the fellows across the country, the maternal fetal medicine fellows, and I asked all my colleagues, especially a lot of the leaders in the field, if they had ever experienced burnout. And they actually shared a lot of their comments. And I think that's part of it, is that many, many people experience burnout. We just don't like to talk about it. So one of my colleagues said, it boggles my mind how we treat our cars better than we treat ourselves. We want them to be reliable and dependable. So what do? We take care of them, maintain them regularly. We keep the tank filled so that they can go the distance when we really need them. We know that the harder we are on them, the more they need and the faster they tend to wear. In this regard, we're no different. As humans, really, we need to be gassed up regularly. We need some time to be maintained in order that we can go the distance for ourselves and everyone around us who depend on us to be the amazing people that we are. And I can say from this past year, I've known that that's like incredibly true. This has been one of the most challenging years I've had in medicine. So if you need to measure your burnout, the American Medical Association has a free program called Steps Forward, and Society of Maternal and Fetal Medicine will have this too. And there's a link to the Mini Z Burnout survey. If you register, you can take it for free. But what are the ramifications of burnout? Decreased productivity, profound implications for individual physicians and their family, clinicians leaving practice, decline in patient care. You could actually calculate on the AMA Steps Forward the cost of replacing one physician. It could be up to $1 million. Depending on the specialty, the practice, location, the duration of the vacancy. What causes burnout? Many things: paperwork and administration, increasing stress, inbox alerts. I can't even have to tell you guys about the clicks per day, excessive hours, non-face-to-face activities, just everything that we're going through right now. Negative leadership, liability. So I put out one of these word clouds to on Obstetric Moms Group. So we have, instead of Mass Medical Society, we have Obstetric Moms Group, and I asked people to give me words about things that cause burnout for them. These are the bigger ones, are ones that people wrote down more, but decisions, system, depression, loans, power, traumatization, lots of things. And then came COVID, right? So we had all these typical stressors, and then we had a pandemic. And this is data, from my society, from maternal fetal medicine doctors, because I usually give this talk to OBGYNs. You can look at individual rates of burnout for different societies. It's around 50%, where women within our group are often more like 60% burnout rate in maternal fetal medicine providers. There have been a few studies about burnout during COVID. On average, it's almost 70%, 76% of physicians that have been burned out. And this is Italy, Romania, the US. So the rates of burnout have really increased over COVID. So the first thing I'll say is I'm going to talk a little bit about systemic applications of evidence, but this talk is more about what you can personally do for yourself. But I think this is really important because people say like, oh, you expect me to just help myself. This is from Tate Schoenfeld, who's one of the experts in this field. He said there's an urgent need for systemic application of evidence-based interventions addressing the drivers of burnout among physicians. These interventions must address contributing factors in the practice environment rather than focusing exclusively on helping physicians care for themselves and training themselves to be more resilient. So there's a lot of information out there on really good ways to fine-tune organizations and actions you can take within your own organization to help decrease burnout. And it involves having to deal with the culture, efficiency of practice, and also personal resilience. Just to give you a sense, this is just one paper that's multiple organizational strategies and tactics to improve well-being. So there's a lot of really good summary papers that do go through this, but this isn't what my talk is about today. So Dr. Schoenfeld also said there are a number of steps physicians can take at the individual level to promote their own wellness. This often begins by identifying personal and professional values and determining how they will be prioritized when conflicts between personal and professional responsibilities arise. This exercise requires self-awareness, limit setting, and reframing. Scientific studies have also identified the habits and qualities that promote resilience in challenging situations, which are skills that can be learned and developed. Attention to self-care, developing personal interests, and protecting and nurturing relationships are essential. So that's really what I'm going to spend the rest of my talk talking about, is these personal things that you can do to promote your own resilience under the guise of we know that the institutions need to change as well. So Tara, who's on this call too, went to Miraval. So this is just a plug to say, when in non-COVID times, when you're doing resilience things, you can go to beautiful places for CME. I can't even remember now what it was like to travel, but it was amazing. And it was part of continuing medical education. I think there's one in Bora Bora for resilience, if anyone is interested. So first, what is wellness, right? So wellness is health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So wellness actually just got, probably not just, it's been a few years now, this was 2017, but got added to the Hippocratic Oath. And there's a line that says, I will attend to my own health, well-being, and abilities in order to provide care of the highest standard. So this is a 2,500-year-old Hippocratic Oath that now, for the first time, says that we need to give to ourselves too. So where is my information coming from for this talk? Really everywhere, honestly. I've read a lot of books. I've now put together a whole web-based learning with 15 modules for the Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine. I actually took a class at Yale that was called the Happiness, literally like, the science of well-being. And I've listened to a lot of TED Talks. And I've done at this point in my career a lot of leadership conferences where I've gotten some of this information as well. So here are some tools. The first thing I will say that I do this with all of my fellows is to know your strengths. There's two sort of more well-known strengths finder. One is a little bit more work-oriented and one is a little bit more personal-oriented. You can buy this book. It's from the Gallup organization, or you can do this online. It's the Clifton Strengths Finder. And UPenn also has a website, the Authentic Happiness website, where you can take a free test to figure out what your strengths are. And this is from Marty Seligman, who's really like the godfather or the father of positive psychology. He wrote, "The good life consists in deriving happiness by using your signature strengths every day in the main realms of living. The meaningful life adds one more component, using these same strengths to forward knowledge, power, or goodness." So just to give you a sense, there's a lot of data on this. You take this test, you learn what your strengths are. And if you actually use them in everyday life, they compared people who did use their strengths and who didn't. There's a sustained happiness over a 6-month period of time. That's what you can see from these preliminary studies. I don't even think they're preliminary. I think that they're actually, and this is basically scores and positive experience of work for people who use their character strengths. And this is an example from one of my colleagues. They did this at his office, and everybody took the test and they got their strengths. And this is a quote from him. They did a division retreat where they did a half-day Clifton Strengths Finder talk, and they shared the results. They actually put them outside their offices, and they kind of tailored what their tasks were within their group based on what their strengths were. And he said, our division is very diverse in our Clifton Strength Finder results, and our director is willing to have each of them tailor their strengths and interests to make their division particularly strong. So for me, it's helped me in terms of knowing what my strengths are and what drives me and kind of gearing my career towards that. So that's my next point, which is called job crafting. I highly recommend, there's one for women that's called Ask For It. My husband in law school, they gave every law student this book, Getting to Yes. But nobody talks about this in medical school. And Ask For It is written by a group of people from Harvard who teach women how to negotiate for things. So either one of these books is really good. I personally, for me as a woman in medicine, just in general, but it's not really particular to medicine, but it really taught me how to negotiate. So this is from a leader in our field who's now a chair. This is a story from her. She said that she experienced a faculty member who was feeling burned out. Prior to that, no one had ever voiced any concerns to her that they were heading there. So she's amazing. She had her whole group examine their work schedule and list things that brought them joy and those things that brought them pain. And some of it was as simple as like one of her attendings wanted to drop their kids off at school at 9 a.m. So she was able to shift their schedules a little bit. And what was shocking is no one had even thought to ask. They just had thought about quitting. So prior to looking for another job, I'd highly encourage you to work with your current job. Just think of creative things that can really help you so that you don't have any regrets. And I can say, I've been through 3 different division directors, and I think by really and I love my division director. I actually have a slide on her later, but I think throughout the whole thing, I've really been very vocal about just saying, what it is I need and trying to shape my job in that way. So ask yourself, what would and this is true for students and residents too, and fellow graduates, what is your ideal job? How can you add value? And this is sort of the growth versus the fixed mindset. A growth mindset is you persevere in the face of failures. You keep thinking about challenges. How can you learn? How can you change? Versus a fixed mindset, which is to avoid challenges. You give up easy. You just ignore the feedback. You stay where you are. So this is more on job crafting. I really loved working and mentoring people. I'm really interested in research. So I've been able to shape my job and my life to really suit what it is that I love doing. Improving your efficiency. So family doctors spend 86 minutes of pajama time with EHRs nightly. I mean, you guys know all about this. I've learned about how to be much more efficient. And this is from another colleague. People don't seem to work at this. This is not me, but I have worked at this too. My colleague has sought information on how to achieve clinic efficiency. I routinely will visit this topic. So for me, we have a guy who came and assessed all of us. This is from me, and he offered us each an hour on how to improve our Epic. So I'm doing it in June. I'll let you guys know if that helps. But definitely, for me too, I've stopped looking at my phone. I set a timer. I just try and do my charts while I'm in clinic, and I've learned how to be a lot more efficient. And this is a podcast. It's called Ditching Perfectionism. Doing B-, or really, I kind of like to think of it as B+ work done is better than perfect. So it's not that you're going to have bad patient information in your notes, but you don't need to cut and paste every single image of everything and have everything perfect. And, I see people write down every single detail. It's knowing what you can do that conveys the information in a succinct fashion and being as efficient as possible. I do something called every Monday, there's podcasts on figuring out how to maximize your to-do list. I use a bullet journal. I'm not quite as good as this person. They look pretty slick. This is not my bullet journal, but every Monday I spend an hour going through my list and trying to figure out what I'm going to do and what I'm going to accomplish, and then I schedule it out. But this is just to say that people have systems in place, and there's lots of podcasts now on how to help yourself maximize your time. The other thing I would 100% say is and this is especially true for students, is to really master your finances, because financial freedom equals personal freedom. Being financially stable and this is hard for doctors because we have loans to go through med school, but it helps you overset mindset so much because you're not trapped in your situation. So there's a great website called the White Coat Investor where they help you go through your finances. There's a million tips. This is the book that they have. They also have a course, but this is something I've done over the past 5 years, and it's very much helped us. Practice saying no. So this is from another colleague. It's a little harder to do as a trainee, but learn what makes you happy and then practice saying no to everything else at least once a week. For me, when I was a trainee, I would say, that sounds like a great opportunity. Right now I'm doing XYZ, so I can't do that, but let me see if so-and-so is interested in that opportunity. And for me now, as someone who's more senior, I like to pass on opportunities to other people. So this is happiness. So we're going to shift a little bit to some of the data on happiness. On January 12th, 2017, Yale actually opened Psych 157. It seems like so long ago, but originally it was 300 people, and then it soon became, I think, like a quarter of the entire undergraduate class at Yale. And it's the most popular course in Yale's 316-year history. I don't know what that says about Yale, but I think it just says a lot about how students really want to learn about their own happiness. You can actually take this course. It focuses on positive psychology and behavioral change, and it's free on something called Coursera. So you can actually take the Science of Wellbeing course on Coursera. But the first step is are you even happy? You can measure your happiness on the UPenn Authentic Happiness website. I would definitely encourage you guys to do that and just see where you're at. And then UPenn also has a theory of well-being called PERMA, which is a whole model on how to improve your well-being, which is positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, but they also have a course. So in terms of happiness, can you think, is this genetic? Can I be happy? And there's a whole book called The How of Happiness that showed that our intentional, effortful activities have a powerful effect on how happy we are over and above the effects of our set point and circumstances we find ourselves in. So there's this thought that there is a genetic set point maybe of like 50%, whether you're, you have the chemicals to be happy or not. But then intentional activities, about 40% of that actually drives happiness and 10% life circumstances. So this is just some of the things that she mentioned in her course. Investing in experiences makes us happier than investing in stuff. I mean, this is during COVID, sort of a moot point because we're not really traveling, but like a new car sticks around to disappoint you. But if you travel or do an experience, there's a lot of data to show that experiences really enhance your happiness because you're left with the memories of the experience. For me, during COVID, it started out as gardening. So with my kids, we started out with 2 little gardens. This is last summer. Now we're up to I think we have 22 container gardens. But this has brought me, I literally water my plants like every night. I go from container to container. And this definitely brings me a lot of happiness, more than grant writing, I have to say. Gratitude. So it's not just for Oprah. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you'll never have enough. Be thankful for what you have. There's a lot of data on gratitude. There's actually studies where they have people think back over the past week and write down in lines 5 things in your life that you're grateful for. And if you do that over time, you'll have sustained happiness. I know this is a curse word, but what I did is like in the beginning of COVID, I sent these socks to a bunch of my friends who were in New York and at Yale. And my whole OB team in March when we were on the front lines of COVID and figuring out how to deal with pregnant women during the pandemic. So I sent probably 10 of these out to my friends, and just giving it to them made me happy. I took out the curse word, but then for them wearing it and getting it by surprise also, I think gave them joy. Social media definitely decreases happiness. I mean, I definitely use it for connection now, but I think there's a lot of data on using Facebook. The more your life satisfaction levels decline over time. I mean, this is my kids during the pandemic. I can't help it. I try. We put their computers in the closet, but it's been a weird combination. I wonder what we'll find out because it actually led to them being connected to some of their friends and not so alone. But the loneliness is a big thing, especially in medicine. Social connection is really hard. We're trying to do things socially within our hospital, and then COVID happened. But definitely social connection. There's a lot of talk about physicians or people in depression and like making friends. Flow is a whole theory. Being in flow, which is the state when you're incredibly present and your body and mind is stretched to its limit. I don't know if you all have an activity that helps you feel like you're in flow, but that's definitely been associated. It's a zone or mental state and where you're fully immersed in the feeling of energized focus. For me, during COVID, it was getting a team together and writing, scientific writing. So we found, it was crazy. The world was crazy that first month. We had a patient come in and deliver with COVID. It was our first patient at Yale. I was able to get a team of scientists together. We got her placenta, we got her consent. We figured out how to do, this is actually electron microscopy, and we found COVID in her placenta. And then we published the experience. So because nobody knew any of this stuff. So I think navigating this team, and then ultimately I was able to have my resident who was navigating the politics is sort of my flow too. And I was able to have my resident as first author on this massive paper, and we got the cover of this big journal. So for me, that was my flow, is like helping figure out what's going on with COVID and pregnancy. And this is for the academic places I give talks. My academic productivity definitely went up during COVID this past year, because this is like what kind of keeps me calm, is writing about things and the scientific journey. So there's also incredible importance to a good leader. And this is my boss, Uma Reddy. She used to be at the NIH and she came to Yale. a few years ago, but I will definitely say that this is not a personal thing. But, you know, if you don't have a good leader, that doesn't mean that you can't be happy. But there are lots of traits of a good leader, which is kind of what I strive to be too. You know, hold career development conversations, inspires you, empowers you, is interested in your opinion, provides feedback, recognizes the job well done. I think there's a new generation of leaders that are being created now, and that's in this current world what I'm striving to be as well. So it's wonderful to have a mentor like that. Mindfulness. This is very difficult for me to do, but this definitely brings happiness statistically. There's like 1 million apps. I listen to Daily Calm sometimes. I try to do Headspace. I like the Australian guy, but it's very hard for me to do this. I know, but it would make me happier if I did it on a more regular basis. So I did exercise. This is something I didn't really know about. Honestly, I used to take walks with my husband, but through COVID, in my like a really thick mask, I've been going to Orange Theory, and I will definitely say it increases happiness. So this is Orange Theory is like a workout class. Sleep. I mean, to tell physicians to sleep, especially in OBGYN, is like a really hard call, but I did invest in a really good mattress. It's Memorial Day. And then for me, decorating, like creating a home, that's a wonderful place to live, is really important to me, creating an environment that I really love. But there are other tools you can use. Getting coached. There was a study that came out in JAMA that talked about getting coached, and 88 physicians in the study got coached from a physician coach. They had 6 coaching sessions facilitated by a professional coach. And the absolute rates of overall burnout at 5 months of coaching with just 6 sessions decreased by 17% in the intervention group and increased by 5% in the control group, and quality of life improved in the coaching group, the group that had been coached. So I definitely, you know, Yale is investing. I'm doing a coaching course right now. Yale is investing in clinician leaders to be coaches, and I would highly recommend getting coached if that's available to you, because it really does help you deal with life. And the way that coaching works is sort of like cognitive behavioral therapy. Everything in your life is a reflection of choice once you've made. If you want different results, make different choices. So it kind of helps you break down your cognitive models. That's what coaches do if they do it well. So like a great example, I don't know how I'm doing on time because I can't tell from here. I think I'm okay. Martha, am I doing okay on time? I'm almost done.
Yes, it's 7:15.
Okay, good. I just have a little bit left and then we can stop. But in terms of, you know, the way this would work is, you know, if you're always mad that somebody's late or someone you work with is late, you think like, I can't believe this. My schedule is terrible. This is going to ruin my day. The patients are terrible. You yell at someone. For me, I eat chocolate in the office. That's like my default. I don't know why there's so much candy in a medical office, but there is. And it perpetuates a bad mood. You know, if you can catch yourself in this pattern, you can think the patient's late. Potentially they had no resources to get there. You could feel empathetic. And, you know, you create a 30-minute rule. You take different actions, and that changes how you go about your day. And you could do this. I mean, I do this kind of thought stuff with my husband, my life, my kids. So the other really important thing is to think, why do we do what we do? And I would encourage you to look at Simon Sinek. He's got a TED Talk, but working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. So it's just important to go back and say, why are we physicians? Why are we doing this? This was me during COVID, getting my vaccine. I was impassioned to help, you know, take care of women with this new exposure in the pandemic. I was super excited to help with the vaccine rollout. I did vaccinations. I actually gave my husband one of his vaccines, which was kind of awesome. Not at home and at a medical center registered. I didn't like steal a Pfizer vaccine. But to put it all together, you know, different actions you can take for yourself. Besides the action of working on your institution is, you know, the gratitudes, the journaling, exercise, meditation, random acts of kindness, making a social connection, deleting Facebook. You know, we all love data. There's a few great studies that show like intervention for physician burnout, a systematic review. And there's also one that shows residents who do this. But training these coping strategies, the training of interpersonal skills to increase social support, the management of negative emotions. You can do that with coaching, the discussion of specific professional high stress situations, the use of relaxation techniques. I will say that new generations of physicians should begin individual prevention training earlier in their careers in order to develop a skill set and personal belief system to provide effective inoculation against situations that may make them more prone to burnout. I think the next generation does this a lot better than I did. I remember working in an emergency room. I had anaphylaxis. I got IV epi and I went back to the labor floor the next day. I've definitely worked with an IV in my arm with food poisoning. And I just think now physicians are a lot better about talking about, what their life is like and the reality and make themselves vulnerable. I reviewed 104 applications for fellowship this couple weeks ago because we had a deadline to do it, and people really talked about their life experiences. It was so impressive. Whereas we kind of talked about the medical things we should have. People talked about everything that happened to them and how that really drove them. And it was very inspiring. So I would say it's impossible for you to go on as you were before. So you must go on as you never have. And I think I told you that, that baby that I went back and I looked at is now a toddler and doing really well. I've learned to be a lot kinder to myself. It's not something that happened overnight. You're looking at and I'm not perfect, certainly. I have lots of things that I'm still working on, but this has been, a 5-year process, 10-year process, but I definitely am much happier than I was when I began this whole process. And I wouldn't say that I'm grateful to have that experience, but I definitely feel like it helped me live life in a way that I wouldn't have lived life before, and to teach others about this, which is what's really important to me. And this is from, I do, when I do inpatient, they didn't give me the flowers. One of my fellows gave her mom flowers spontaneously that week, but I asked them to do a gift giving at the end of the week. And this is just some of the stuff they said. But I'm thankful for you caring about our wellness, making it real and significant effort to improve it. And the team really, really appreciated just 1 week of doing things for each other. And we have time, I think, for questions. I see there are a couple.
Yes, we do. And thank you so much, Heather. I'm sitting here thinking about all the things that I could do. And I think this gives us so much food for thought. And I have to say, I'm a person who my glass is always half full. And the pandemic has made me much more thoughtful. And I see these flowers here and I'm thinking, any little act of kindness that you can do, a text to somebody or something like that it's something we just don't do. And for our colleagues, for our family, for anybody. And I think this is giving me so many things to think about. I really, really appreciate this. So if anybody has any questions, we are looking at putting this in chat. So if you just click on the icon that says chat and type in your questions, that's how we're going to handle this, because we were looking to see if there were hands raised anywhere, but I don't know where that went. So if you just type in chat, I will see that and I can call on you. But while I'm waiting for that, I just want to say some of the things that I learned from this talk, because I found it very inspiring. And I look back on COVID and I think, we can all think this was horrible, this was terrible, how awful this was. But in fact, it was really refreshing not to have to go out every night, not to have to travel, not to have to do, I'm sorry, I'm going to start my video here. Sorry about that. Not to have to do these things that really didn't make any difference. That's terrible to say. And some of the things that we did do, we learned how to use Zoom, that's for sure. And people complained about it and they thought it was terrible, but not really. It really was nice to have to be able to connect, yet have this time to ourselves. So as you did, Tiff, I'm thinking about the gardening and all of that stuff. And when you think about just in general, all of the home improvements that were done because people realized they were never at home before. And now they're at home realizing, oh my goodness, we have to do something about this house. So try to get a contractor now. You can't. But I think this is all just really very, if you think about it, very enriching. So does anybody have any comments or any thoughts? If you could just put it in chat and I can call on you.
Yeah.
Harry, do you want to say something? You have something in chat. Do you want to say something?
Heather, thank you so much. What a beautiful talk and what a beautiful space you've opened up. And I'm just really appreciating how when I was doctoring with young children, it was like another stress and guilt to ask for what I needed, for work-life balance. And, pioneers like yourself, and I see it in the medical literature, how people are, rumbling with vulnerability a lot more, to quote Brene Brown, that it's really okay to talk about what we need as women and as women physicians. And it's okay to put family first and to really ask for that. And, to not have to feel like you're sneaking around to take a kid to a pediatrician appointment checkup. That, I remember I used to have to just say, I'm leaving for 2 hours, here's my beeper. And, I felt terrible that that was a bad thing to do, to ask for what I needed to take care of my family. And now the conversation is so much more open around it. And that's a huge shift, especially for women in burnout prevention. I'm just really appreciative of your work and to help others in this really important field. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think as a leader, I try and model that a lot now. I talk about my kids and my life and like how everything's not perfect. I have a 9 and 11-year-old. It's a mess. I mean, it's okay, but it's a lot. There's a lot going on. Thankfully, my husband's home right now. Yeah.
So I'm going to chime in as a pediatrician who is retired and has been around for a long time. I hate to say it, but in 2 years, my 50th reunion from medical school is coming up. Don't do the math. And I think about going back there and thinking, you never said anything. You never said anything about how you needed to be there for your children. You never said that because that made you look weak. And there were so few of us in medical school and so few of us that wanted to advance ourselves that you just couldn't say that because they thought, well, you don't care about us. You care more about your family. And frankly, I did. But you had to sort of, and I don't know if there's anybody on the call here that's in my age range, but that was what happened. And I look back at it now and I think, that was terrible. That was just terrible, and it shouldn't be happening, and it isn't happening anymore. So if we have some young people on here and some young women that are medical students or residents, that does not happen anymore. And if it does, you let me know, because I will talk to whoever you need to have me talk to. That's ridiculous. So
I've even had people say that too. Like, you're going to have kids and you're not going to be an academic. You're not going to want to work anymore.
Oh, when I interviewed to go to medical school, I was met with, we don't like to have women in medical school because they just get married and drop out. Can you imagine that? That's what I was told in the interviews that I went to. If that happened now, I hope not. I hope not. I see Harry has the thing. We had to man up to be a woman in medicine. Absolutely, we did. Thank you.
But I think this is for men too. For people have a hard time being vulnerable, and I think that it's really changing. And I agree. Yeah.
I think it's definitely changing, and I think this is something that it's not something to make us look like we have to be, obnoxious about this, or we have to be aggressive in a bad way about this. I think I'm looking at the last slide you have up here. why don't we give flowers to people? Why don't we bring in, and I hate to say it because I did this, we brought in stuff. I was in a small practice and we brought in things. We brought in things for patients that we knew were coming. But that was the nice part about a small practice. And then I worked as an employed physician, and we still did the same thing. We brought in things, and when somebody was helpful to us, we brought them something or gave them something. And honestly, you thought you got them, you thought they gave you the world. And we just don't tend to do that. And I hope that, and I hate to say this, but I hope COVID has brought about some thoughtfulness and some kindness, that all of this stuff that we had to deal with has made us start thinking more about this. And Heather, you were really excellent about helping us think more about this. Anybody else have any comments at all? I see some very nice, that sort of thing. I'll give it another second. If nobody else has any comments, we're going to give you a few more minutes to yourselves so you can be mindful and you can enjoy your family. I do have to say that I was on a call this afternoon with a board that I sit on, and the CEO of the board said, or the CEO of the system said, I really like this. My wife and I go out to dinner. I don't have to have chicken dinners 4 nights a week. I don't have to do this, that, and the other thing. I really like this. And I'm thinking, maybe we ought to rethink this. Why do we have to do all of this? I think that's something that we should start asking, the things that we do. A lot of us in this call sit on a variety of things and a variety of boards. And why do we have to do this? Can't we do this from home? Can't we do this as Zoom? I think we all got very efficient in Zoom. And I think it's something that we might want to think about. And then think about just the cost effectiveness of all this, so you don't have to have all those dinners and all that sort of stuff. So I think this has been very thought-provoking, and I so appreciate what you had to say to us, Heather. And it's been really very, to me, eye-opening, and makes me appreciate even more how I need to think about this. Late in my career, I have to admit, but something that has made this very, I think it's just been, to me, something that I think back, I need to change things the way I do. And I need to be better about thoughtfulness and about appreciating the people that are around me that keep me focused, keep me happy in my family. And I don't have to be guilty when I say, you know what, I can't go there. I can't do this because my grandson has a baseball game and I'm going to be there.
And I also think take time for yourself too, because I think that's something else we don't do very often.
Right, that's right. I have to tell you, I don't want to show you the blisters on my feet from all the walking I've done. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to this before we stop? I see some things in chat all about how they enjoyed this, so that's very nice. I appreciate that. I do have to say I want to really thank you. This has been very thought-provoking, and that's what we attempt to do. We attempt to have people hear about this and then think about it. And I know I'm going to be thinking about this for a long time. And I have a committee that I sit on that I chair, and I'm terming off of it. And because of your talk, Heather, I am going to be giving each of the people that have dealt with me a little gift for thanking them. It's not going to be much, but for thanking them for keeping me on the straight and narrow and for keeping me intact. And just, it's something, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it's that you thought of them and that you appreciated what they did for you. So I think that's really great. So I'm going to have to close now. I don't see anything else. Harry wanted to please share the PDF, just so you know that this is being recorded. And Martha, I'm pretty sure, and Melissa, I'm pretty sure this is going to be posted on our website. Yeah. So WDMS.org. And so if you want to have access to the slides, to the presentation, it will be there. So
Exactly.
we have a lot of stuff on our website. We do a lot. There's 20 districts in the Worcester, in the Mass Medical Society. And I hate to say this, I'm a past president of the Mass Medical Society, but the Worcester district is the best. We do the best.
Martha,
So-
I can send you a PDF of the slides. That's fine.
All right, great. Thank you.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So this event will conclude our 2020-2021 season, but we're hoping to have some outdoor activities perhaps this summer, and the event schedule is going to be coming out. Our next Women's Caucus event is hopefully slated for September 2021. The other thing I should let people know is that we have reached out in the past and we want to do this. There is also a women's group for the Worcester Bar Association, and we have met with them in the past. So we have had women physicians and women lawyers actually sharing wine and hors d'oeuvres at our offices, and we look to do that again. We want to have some activities that will bring us together, but we will be very judicious about your time and about what that means. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Kathy. And also Tom, I know was on. I think he might have jumped off, but thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it so much. And I appreciate everybody. And again, Heather, thank you so much for this. It was very thought-provoking. I'm going to have a hard time falling asleep tonight because I'm going to be thinking about all the things I need to do. And I'm going to have a to-do list, which is going to be probably like yours, which sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So thanks so much for everybody. And good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm giving you a few more minutes than I thought I would. So make good use of it.